Hidden Love Revealed. How a life-changing date with a CEO transformed a lonely receptionist's world. Emily stood behind the polished marble reception desk of the high-rise law firm, feeling like a ghost in a world of crisp suits and impressive titles. Every day was a barrage of unseen struggles. Despite her humble beginnings, living paycheck to paycheck, she longed for a life beyond the walls of her office, where dreams felt like elusive whispers. Her older brother, a dedicated veteran, often reminded her of the importance of hard work, but the disparity between their realities loomed larger than the city's towering skyscrapers. Each morning, she walked through those glass doors, unsure if anyone would notice the weight of her dreams or the loneliness that hung heavy in the air. That evening, intrigue sparked when she accepted an invitation to the firm's late-night mixer. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter, cocktails glimmering as shiny as the suits people wore. Nervousness tangled with excitement as she stepped deeper into the crowd. Then, in a twist of fate, she found herself face to face with Jake, the charismatic CEO. His smile was magnetic and his presence commanding. Emily's heart raced. Their conversation began innocently enough, but soon revealed something profound. They were both overwhelmed by loneliness. Behind his polished exterior, Jake carried an unseen weight, a loneliness that mirrored her own. As they spoke about their struggles, the walls around their hearts began to crack, and a spark of connection ignited. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the night progressed, their laughter filled the void until Emily stumbled upon an insecurity that crushed her spirit. Questions flooded her mind. What would her family think? How could she possibly fit into his world? Just then, her uncertainty met reality. A spilled drink soaked her blouse, igniting an embarrassing spectacle. The room fell silent. Whispers erupted, flooding her face with humiliation. She fled, the echoes of snickers and mocking smiles still ringing in her ears. As she retreated to the sanctuary of her small apartment, tears streamed down her cheeks, her heart heavy with judgment and fear. But her family rallied around her. Their unwavering love wrapped her in a comforting embrace. They reminded her that authenticity and community were worth cherishing, that failure didn't define her. Stepping onto the painted stage of a local community event, Emily felt torn, nerves twisting within her like a knotted rope. The audience represented all her doubts and fears. Yet as she faced them, ready to reveal her artistic talent, she felt a flicker of something powerful. Her heart pounded, hands trembled, and questions lingered. Would she find the courage to step into her true identity? The moment hung in the air, heavy with anticipation, time suspended as eyes met and hearts connected. The weight of societal expectations felt almost unbearable. Would she embrace her roots and come to terms with herself? Or would she let the judgments of others continue to dictate her life? Each beat hung in balance, leaving the crowd breathless and Emily wondering about the path that lay ahead, a journey that could change everything. Emily's heart raced as she stood on that dimly lit stage, the bright spotlights illuminating her face while shadows danced behind her. The audience, a mix of local townspeople, friends, and a few familiar faces from work, watched in eager silence. This was her moment. The air buzzed with anticipation, but inside, she wrestled with fear and uncertainty. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage. The flickering lights reflected in her eyes, and she could almost hear Jake's voice in her mind, urging her to let go of her fears. Just be yourself, he said when she opened up to him. She had clung to those words since their encounter. But tonight, standing before the crowd, that belief felt like a distant hope. With trembling hands, she clutched her paintbrush and palette, the familiar sense of acrylics calming her racing heart. She glanced at the audience members, finding comfort in the faces of her family, their smiles warm and encouraging. They believed in her, and that made a world of difference. "Hi, everyone," she finally managed to say, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm Emily, and today, I want to share a piece of my heart with you through art. As she began, her strokes filled the canvas with vivid colors resembling the emotions she had buried for so long. This was more than just paint. It was a tapestry woven from her dreams and struggles. Each brush stroke seemed to unleash the weight she had carried for years, creating a kaleidoscope of vulnerability mixed with resilience. The audience leaned closer, absorbed in her every movement. Laughter and soft murmurs echoed as she infused humor into her narrative, sharing funny anecdotes from her past. In that moment, she felt the connections being forged, each giggle shared, tightening an invisible bond between her and the crowd. The fear she initially felt began to dissolve, replaced by the exhilarating rush of being seen, truly seen. Then, as she finished the final stroke, silence enveloped the room once more. She turned to face the audience, her heart pounding not from fear, but from exhilaration and hope. The colors bright and alive on the canvas represented her transformation, no longer just a receptionist, but an artist, a storyteller. And then came the applause, an eruption of noise that washed over her, pulling her into a cloud of joy. Tears of relief filled her eyes, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe it all in. Everything she had worried about faded into a distant memory. The fear of judgment? Gone. As she stepped down from the stage, she spotted Jake standing at the back. His expression was one of admiration, the corner of his mouth quirking into a proud smile. Her heart fluttered as their eyes locked, and the warmth between them reignited. But just as she walked toward him, her family bursting onto the stage, enveloping her in a suffocating embrace, an unexpected sound pierced through the celebration. A commotion near the entrance of the community center drew her attention. Someone was shouting. Could it be another embarrassing moment, or something far worse? The uncertainty tinged her excitement with a hint of anxiety. Emily turned, already sensing that this night, filled with promise, might just take another unexpected turn. The shout echoed through the hall, pulling Emily from her moment of triumph into a whirlpool of confusion. She turned fully, searching the crowd for the source. Faces morphed from smiles to frowns, laughter replaced by whispered worries. What was happening? The shout came again, louder this time. Get back here, you can't just leave. Emily squinted through the dim light and saw a figure pushing through the audience. A man, tall, with disheveled hair and an anxious expression etched on his face. He seemed to be chasing someone who had bolted through the doors of the community center. Murmurs fluttered through the crowd, blending with the sound of her heartbeat. She could sense a collective tension, a palpable unease settling like a thick fog. Jake's smile faded as he began to move toward her, concern knitting his brow. Emily, he called, his voice cutting through the chaos. Stay here. But she didn't want to stay. This was her moment. How could anything spoil it? Curiosity gripped her. Without thinking, she stepped toward the stage. She caught snippets of the frantic conversation. I'm not going back, the man shouted, followed by a desperate sob. Her heart sank. Someone was in distress. Before she knew it, she was at the edge of the audience. The man had reached the entrance, his hands gripping the doorframe as if it were his anchor. Please let me go. A woman's voice answered him, pleading but firm. You can't run away from this. You need to talk. Emily's instincts kicked in. She glanced at Jake, who was now pushing through the crowd, clearly concerned. What is going on? He asked someone nearby as they all turned to witness the unfolding drama. As the woman approached the man, Emily noticed tears streaming down her cheeks, her expression a mixture of fear and longing. Instinctively, she had walked closer, drawn to their pain like a moth to a flame. Please just give me some space, he yelled, frustration coating his words. The man's raw emotion struck a chord inside her. She could feel her heart ache for them. What did they want from each other? Why was this moment resonating so deeply within her? It was as if she was witnessing a pivotal moment in a love story, twisted and full of anguish. Suddenly, the man looked up, meeting Emily's gaze, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as if they were connected by an invisible thread. His desperation echoed her own fears of vulnerability and judgment. She could almost hear the silent screams of his heart, a yearning to break free, to express, to be genuine. Before she could comprehend what she was doing, Emily called out, maybe you both just need to talk. Don't shut each other out. Her voice cut through the tension, unexpectedly strong. The crowd turned to her, surprised by her boldness. The pair froze, their eyes now focusing on her, as if she had just unveiled a truth neither had dared to acknowledge. The hum of the crowd dimmed, breaths caught in anticipation. What would happen next? Would they break through the walls they built around themselves? Emily's pulse quickened. In this uncertain moment, she stood on the edge of another transformation. Her art had drawn her into a deeper canvas of human connection, an intricate web of emotions that reached beyond her own. But just then, a new sound pierced through the air, a phone ringing urgently, disrupting the fragile moment. As the distraction drew the crowd's eyes away, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the journey had only just begun. What did this moment signify? And more importantly, what other truths were waiting to be uncovered? Emily's heart raced, caught between the intensity of the scene before her and the sudden interruption. The phone shrilled again, cutting through the emotion like a knife, pulling everyone's focus away from the two people at the center of this unfolding drama. She felt a mix of relief and disappointment. Maybe they needed a moment of quiet, yet now there was a different kind of chaos. Can someone answer that? A voice called from the crowd, frustration threading through it. Curious eyes darted around, searching for the source as a woman pulled her phone out. As she fumbled with it, Emily turned her attention back to the man and the woman. They hadn't moved, still locked in their own world. The man's face softened slightly as he looked at Emily. That connection sparked again. She could see the turmoil melting into the corners of his eyes, battling with his instinct to flee and the desire for understanding. What do you mean, talk? He finally asked, voice trembling. What's there to even say? There's everything to say, the woman urged, stepping closer. You can't just pretend this isn't happening. I'm here for you. Emily's pulse quickened anew. In this moment of honesty, trapped between desperation and hope, their emotions echoed in her own chest. Memories of her own fears surged forward, moments when she hid behind her art, caged by the need for acceptance, scared of rejection. Please, Emily interjected softly, her own heart demanding to be part of this scene. It's okay to be scared, but you can't let fear drive you away from each other. Talk it out. You're both hurting, and hurting people don't heal alone. The crowd shifted, cautiously leaning in as the tension in the room began to feel lighter, the heaviness of their own silent battles surfacing. Jake stood closer, observing her and the unfolding encounter, his expression a blend of admiration and concern. The man hesitated, glancing between the woman and Emily. What if it only makes things worse? His voice cracked, vulnerability lacing his words. Maybe, she replied gently, but running won't help. You're already hurting. What is scarier than losing what you cherish? Facing it together feels like the first step toward healing, doesn't it? Tears glistened in the woman's eyes, and Emily held her breath. This could go either way. Would they finally admit their truth? The man took a deep breath, seeming to deflate under the weight of his own apprehension. I never wanted to hurt you, he started, voice barely above a whisper. Just then, the ringing phone ceased, followed by a hesitant silence. The crowd leaned in, collective breaths held for the raw moment. Emily felt like a spectator and a participant simultaneously, enveloped by the quiet ache of empathy. As the man's gaze dropped, a stray thought crossed her mind. Was this her moment too? Was she somehow breaking through her own barriers just by being here, by witnessing and urging connection? The woman stepped forward, her voice steadying. Tell me how you really feel it's safe now. What happened next would decide everything. Would he reach out, or would he retreat into himself again? Would she let him in? Out of nowhere, another phone rang, louder and more insistent this time. Emily jolted slightly, pulling her from the fragile moment, not once but twice. It felt like the universe testing their resolve. Jake stepped closer, whispering, maybe this isn't the time, but Emily shook her head, feeling a surge of determination. These two needed this, and she was not going to let distractions rupture their chance. Keep going, please, she urged, her voice a stream of emotion flowing into the gathering space. As hopes hung in the air, a tear slipped down the man's cheek, carving a path through the dust of his turmoil. What would she say next? What barrier would they break? Would they finally be brave enough to uncover unspoken truths? Emily knew, in that moment, that whatever happened next could change everything, not just for them, but for her too. With another phone ringing in the distance, and the crowd holding its breath, she wondered, was there enough time left for truth to come forward, or would it all slip through their fingers yet again? The man's breath hitched, his gaze flickering between the woman standing before him and Emily, who was urging him on. The silence weighed heavily, almost oppressive, as if the entire world had paused on the edge of an impending revelation. Everyone felt it. This was a moment that demanded courage. "Look, I'm scared too," he finally said, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I never meant for us to end up here. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would just go away." Emily's heart sank a little at his admission. It was all too familiar. The fear of letting someone else see your vulnerabilities could be suffocating. But she had been there. She recognized this dance between truth and avoidance. "No one is asking you to pretend everything is fine," the woman responded softly, wiping her tears away with trembling fingers. "I'm asking you to be real. I want to understand. I can't lose you," he whispered, the rawness in his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "It terrifies me, but I also can't keep pretending." The crowd shifted again, a hushed energy buzzing around them. Emily could feel the tension unraveling, woven together with threads of shared pain and hope. She leaned in closer, feeling like she was part of some fragile pact. "Then let us stop pretending," she said, her own voice growing stronger. "Let us face this together. You both deserve to find your way back to each other, but first, you have to be honest." The man nodded as if under a spell, his gaze locking onto the woman's. In that moment, everything seemed to shift. The weight of the world hung in the balance. There was something almost electric in the air. Emily could sense that this was more than just a personal battle. It was about connection, about rebuilding the very foundations of love. "I was too proud," he continued, a grimace crossing his face. "I thought if I admitted my feelings, if I put myself out there, it would be me being weak. But letting you go feels even weaker." Tears brimmed in the woman's eyes again, sparkling like hope waiting to be unleashed. She took a small step forward. "You're not weak. You're human. You can be honest with me. I need you to be." The moment seemed to hang, delicate yet filled with potential. A crack appeared in the walls they had both built. Would they step through it or retreat back into their solitude? Emily held her breath, willing them both to take that leap. The crowd around her felt like a distant echo. It was just the three of them now, engaged in an intimate battle of the heart. "I care about you so much," he said, voice trembling and raw. "But I've been so afraid of messing things up even more." Vulnerability hung in the air, heavy but honest. The woman stepped closer, their gazes locked as if the rest of the world had faded away. The laughter, the noise, the concerns of the watching crowd evaporated. "Then let us figure it out together," she said softly. Hope sparked in that quiet declaration, overwhelming and fierce. Emily felt something shift within her, pushing her own fears into the background. An impromptu warm light wrapped around the couple, illuminating the pathway to connection that had been obscured for far too long. Those gathered began to murmur softly, a ripple of encouragement washing over the scene. Suddenly, another phone rang. It cut through their fragile moment. Some shifted uneasily. Jake cast an annoyed glance at the noise, but it didn't matter. "Don't let it disrupt you," Emily urged again, but she felt her own heart skip. Time seemed to hold its breath, but she knew they were teetering on the edge of something monumental. Would they take the plunge? Would the fears fade and allow love to blossom in their place? She looked at the man, seeing the clouds of uncertainty still swirling in his eyes. And Emily wondered, as the phone sounded again in the background, would he take that step forward, or would fear win out once more? That question lingered in the air, heavy with possibility, the crowd's anticipation palpable. Would courage break through in this tender moment, or would it slip away again? The tension in the room shifted as the ringing finally stopped, leaving a pronounced silence in its wake. Emily glanced around. The crowd was holding its breath, waiting for the man to respond. His hands trembled, fingers digging into his palms as if grounding himself against the chaotic whirlwind of emotions. "I don't want to lose you either," he finally admitted, his voice lowered to almost a whisper. The sincerity hung in the air, carrying a weight that made Emily shiver. The woman, her face flushed with emotion, took another step closer. "Then show me," she urged gently, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Show me what you mean." Let us not just talk. Let us really, truly be together. It was a powerful sentiment, one that made the spectators lean in, drawn by the rawness blooming between the couple. Emily felt her own heart quicken. This was the moment he had to decide. He hesitated, then nodded. I will. As those two words hung in the air, the crowd thrummed with a wave of collective hope. Emily couldn't help but smile, feeling the warmth spread through her like sunshine pierces a cloudy day. Then, without realizing it, he reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he brushed against hers. This small gesture seemed monumental, a bridge being built between their hearts, fragile yet promising. The woman's breath caught. She reached for him, closing the physical gap that had kept them apart for too long. I never understood how heavy silence could be, how lonely, he confessed, his gaze steady now. I thought the distance was safer, but I see now it only made my heart ache more. I was wrong. A tear slipped down the woman's cheek, glistening in the soft light. You weren't wrong, you were just afraid. And that's okay. We're both scared. The crowd buzzed with encouragement, but all that noise faded into a distant hum for Emily. The world outside their bubble faded into insignificance. The chemistry between the two was palpable and electric. They weren't just standing awkwardly anymore. They were dancing on the precipice of vulnerability, about to take a leap into the unknown. I want to know everything about you, he continued, his voice steady now. I want to share my world with you, the good and the ugly. I want to face whatever comes next together. No more hiding. His resolve inspired a collective sigh that rippled through the audience, an aria of hope seeping into the air. Together, she echoed, her voice thick but hopeful, to face whatever comes. The crowd erupted in soft cheers, clapping gently, as if they were also part of this revelation. Emily felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by the sight of their hearts finally intertwining. But just as the atmosphere began to shift towards celebration, a loud siren wailed in the distance, cutting through the moment. It echoed ominously, stealing the tenderness away. They flinched at the sound, a stark reminder of the outside world intruding upon their fragile sanctuary. Do you want to celebrate this? With dinner tonight? He asked suddenly, his eyes sparkling with sincerity. Dinner, yes. I'd love that, she said, her smile breaking through the shadow of uncertainty. Yet as they shared this promise, a new thought sparked in Emily's mind. What if the siren wasn't the only thing seeking to disrupt their moment? Could they truly withstand the challenges outside and inside? Would they fight for their connection, or would life pull them apart before they had a chance to truly begin? As she watched them bask in newfound hope, Emily wondered if the real test was yet to come. The air thickened again with possibility. Would they embrace the love blossoming or let it wither away? The questions loomed heavy, an undercurrent of tension swirling around their newfound connection. Would love be enough to bridge the abyss between fear and courage? As the cheers died down, Emily shifted her gaze back to the couple. They were still locked in their embrace, the crowd around them just a faint echo in the background. Their earnest smiles transformed into whispers, a private world off-limits to the outside chaos. Emily felt herself being drawn into that moment, her heart beating in rhythm with theirs. But the siren's wail lingered, weaving through the fabric of their joy, a stark reminder of the world filled with uncertainty. It made Emily wonder how long they could hold on to this moment. Would a fleeting dinner be enough to solidify what had been built amidst fear? In what felt like an impulse, she stepped closer, hoping to absorb some of their newfound joy. As she did, a different perspective emerged. There was Karen, the woman with the radiant smile, and Adrian, the man whose courage seemed to illuminate the room. They shared a love that had just been reignited under the spotlight of raw emotion. Yet the unspoken complexities loomed larger than any promise could hope to tackle. Hey, are you all right? A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Tim, one of her co-workers. He stood beside her, concerned and observant. His brow was furrowed deeply, signaling he had noticed her distant expression. I'm fine, she replied quickly, hoping to mask her swirling thoughts. But Tim wasn't fooled. He always saw right through her defenses. You know, it's okay to feel something, he said softly, leaning slightly closer to ensure she felt the weight of his words. Watching them, it's a lot to take, right? She nodded slowly. It is. I can't help but think about what might happen next. Tim sighed, looking back at the couple. That's life, though. We can't predict the storms. He paused, glancing at her. But look at them. They're willing to try. Shouldn't that give us hope? For a moment, a wave of relief washed over Emily. Tim's simple observation felt like an anchor in the turbulent emotional seas. She turned her head to look back at Adrian and Karen, their eyes locked in a gaze that spoke volumes of attempts, of love reborn, and contemplations of shared futures. If they can go through all that and still choose each other, why can't we? She whispered. Tim smiled, a genuine warmth enveloping his features. Exactly. Sometimes the hardest part is just stepping up and being vulnerable. It takes guts, and it looks like they're ready. A part of her wished desperately to be as brave as they were. It was easier to blend into the background, to remain silent among all this noise, but the risk of fading away felt more daunting than any challenge. If love was a leap into the unknown, she had to consider if she was willing to take that leap herself. But then something shifted in her chest. Was she brave enough to pursue her own happiness, just like they were? Before she could continue her ruminations, the atmosphere changed dramatically. The sirens intensified, and suddenly, a figure rushed through the doors. It was a uniformed officer, scanning the room with urgency. He locked eyes with Adrian, and Emily's heart plummeted. "Excuse me. We need to clear this area immediately." The officer's voice cut through the crowd, and a sense of dread filled the air. Whispers erupted around them as confusion ensued. It was as if the reality they were hopeful for had been suddenly yanked away. "What is happening?" Karen's voice trembled, anxiety now coloring her expression. Adrian's eyes darted around, turning serious as he squeezed her hand tighter. "Stay close to me." Emily felt her heartbeat quicken again. Questions spiraled in her mind. What now? Was this some sort of crisis that might sever the tender strings they had just begun to weave together? As the officer began issuing commands, Emily's instincts flared. She had to know what was going on. Would they find a way back to the connection they almost had, or was this the moment that drove them all apart forever? In the swirl of uncertainty, she felt a desire to step into the fray. She could live in the shadows of their story, or she could seize her own narrative. With the sirens wailing and the crowd disbanding, she realized she was faced with her own choice. Could she pick up the broken pieces of her own heart while the world outside demanded their attention? What would she choose when the time came to leap into the unknown? Emily's heart raced, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her veins. The officer's commands echoed like thunderclaps in the turbulent sea of emotions swirling inside her. People stirred around her, voices rising in confusion, but her gaze remained pinned on Adrian and Karen. "Get out. Now," the officer urged, creating a flurry of movement. Emily saw how tightly Adrian grasped Karen's hand, his expression firm, protective. In that moment, their love felt almost tangible, a lifeline amid the chaos. What would happen if they were torn apart? Would they lose the connection they had just begun to explore? A sudden urgency pushed Emily forward. She couldn't simply stand back and watch life unfold without taking part. It was time to act. "Tim," she called, her voice cutting through the din. He turned to her, eyes wide with surprise. "We have to find out what's going on." "What? Are you serious?" Tim's eyes darted to the officer, then back to the crowd that was now shuffling toward the exits. "Yes. I need to know if they're okay." Without waiting for a response, Emily forged ahead, her legs moving in the opposite direction of the crowd. People shouted, questioning what was happening and why they needed to leave, but she pressed on. The officer was still issuing orders, cables of authority pulling taut in the frantic atmosphere, straining against the sudden shift of joy to dread. As she approached Adrian and Karen, she caught a glimpse of fear etched on their faces, the shadows of the unknown clouding the happiness they had just found. Adrian glanced at her, tension lining his jaw. "Emily, you shouldn't be here," he warned, his voice laced with an urgency that resonated through her. "I need to know if you're both okay," she insisted, stopping just short of them. Karen, tears pooling in her eyes, looked between Adrian and Emily. "What is happening? Are we safe?" The officer interjected, his voice heavy with authority. "There's been a security breach. We need to evacuate this area now." Emily felt cold dread claw its way up her spine. A security breach? The words hung in the air, thick with implications. Adrian turned to her, his grip on Karen's hand shifting slightly, as if he was calculating the risk they all now faced. "We need to get out, Emmy. There will be time to sort this out later," he said, but the fear in his eyes mirrored Karen's despair. The moment hung in the air, fraught with uncertainty. Each tick of the clock seemed heavier than the last. Emily realized that this was uncharted territory, a crossroads where decisions would lay the groundwork for their futures. "Let us stick together," she said, the courage within her flaring to life. "I don't want to just run away. If something is happening, we need to understand it." Adrian's gaze held her for a heartbeat longer, and she could see the conflict in him, whether to shield her from the unknown or to bring her into the light. In that silence, an understanding flickered between them, a shared resolve as the chaos around them continued to unfold. Emily felt the weight of her heart, each thud a reminder that she could choose to be more than an observer. Tim caught up, breathless, his expression caught between worry and respect. "All right," he said, glancing at Adrian and Karen. "What do we do?" But before they could answer, a sound broke through the tension, sharp and alarming, like a gunshot. The crowd gasped as an unfamiliar figure appeared at the entrance, silhouetted against the flashing lights outside. "What now?" Emily whispered, her heart racing once more with a mix of dread and adrenaline. Adrian stepped closer to her, his voice low and firm. "Whatever it is, we face it together. Whatever happens next." In that moment, with the sirens still wailing and uncertainty thick in the air, Emily felt something shift inside her. Perhaps, amidst chaos and fear, she could find her strength, and maybe, just maybe, love could still flourish even when pushed to the edge. What awaited them beyond the doorway? Would this be a challenge that could break them, or one that could bind their hearts forever? The figure stepped into the room, shrouded in shadows, and no one dared to breathe. The officer's voice, now stern and commanding, cut through the noise yet again. "Everyone stay calm. We need you to clear the area immediately." Emily's pulse quickened, her eyes searching desperately for any sign of danger. The anxiety in the air felt like static electricity, charging the atmosphere with uncertainty. The crowd shifted, uneasy and frightened, and she felt Adrian's hand closely beside her, a subtle promise that they were in this together. "Who are they?" Karen whispered, her voice quivering. Adrian squinted at the figure, trying to make sense of the sudden chaos. "I don't know. Just stick close." As the mysterious person moved closer, the flashing lights illuminated his face. He looked sharp, dressed in a tailored suit, but it was the wild eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resolve that caught Emily off guard. "Listen up," the man shouted, his voice raised above the confusion. "I need your attention. This is not a drill." Eyes widened, the crowd hushed, and an air of anticipation filled the space. "There's a breach in security, and I can't explain everything right now," he continued. "But what I can tell you is that you need to trust us. We're here to protect you." Emily exchanged a look with Adrian. They were all in shock. The weight of his words sunk deep, treading the line between danger and safety. She could feel it, the dread, the urgency. Everything they had feared was tangible now. "Protect us from what?" Tim's voice rang out, breaking through the tension. "What is really happening?" The man hesitated, as if weighing the risks of a clearer explanation. "There are people who have broken through security protocols. We don't know who they are or their intentions, but they're armed. We're getting you all out of here now." Panic rippled through the crowd again. The realization of the possible threat sent shivers down Emily's spine. She clutched Adrian's hand tighter, as if anchoring herself against the rising tide of fear. "Adrian," she said, looking into his eyes, "we can't just run without knowing. What if we're leaving people behind?" An almost imperceptible shift happened in Adrian's expression. The fear in his eyes was clouded with determination, the flicker of someone prepared to fight for those he loved. "You're right. But if we stay, we could be in danger too." Whatever is out there. Just then, curtains swung open across the auditorium, revealing a group of individuals dressed similarly to the man who spoke, fanning out to create a protective barrier. They were focused, scanning the crowd with sharp, assessing gazes. "Stay close to the exits," one of them shouted, urgency in their tone. "We'll lead you safely out." Something about that voice filled Emily with hope. She could feel Adrian's breathing steady beside her, his strong presence reminding her of their unity. "Okay," she whispered, feeling her resolve strengthen. Let us stick together. We can't let fear win. As they moved toward the exit, the world seemed to shift into slow motion. The chaos folded into urgency as Emily felt the weight of her choices. Each step felt monumental, not just a desire to survive, but a longing to protect the bond they had formed, and, if they made it out, the chance to explore what lay ahead. Emily. Tim's voice shattered her thoughts. Can you see anyone else you know? She turned, scanning the crowd, heart heavy with the thought of leaving friends behind. No, not yet. But a flicker of something caught her eye in the far corner, another familiar face struggling to find their way through the panicking crowd. Could they help others before leaving? In a heartbeat, the choice laid heavy on her heart: abandon what they loved for safety, or risk it all for hope. Adrian glanced at Emily, catching the silent struggle in her eyes. We can't turn back now. We need to go. They'll figure it out. She hesitated, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. Just as she opened her mouth to argue, the building shook with a thunderous reverberation and the lights flickered ominously. What was that? Karen gasped, her face pale. Stay together. The officer shouted again, panic threading through his otherwise firm directive. Emily took a deep breath, realizing they might have no other choice but to follow the crowd into the unknown. But in that moment, she also knew that her heart's revelation would not be buried in darkness. In the face of uncertainty, what would she choose? As they moved closer to the exit, adrenaline surged through her, igniting the strength she didn't know she had. What awaited them outside? Would their bonds withstand the forthcoming storm, or would they be splintered by the revelations lurking in the shadows? Emily stood at the edge of chaos, adrenaline coursing through her veins as the urgency filled the air around her. Wrapped in Adrian's steady grip, she felt the flickers of fear and hope tangled in her heart. They were on the brink of something unimaginable, faced with an uncertain path ahead. Come on, we need to move, Adrian urged, his voice cutting through her swirling thoughts. The crowd was starting to surge forward, a tide of anxiety swept with the echo of sirens. She could feel the weight of her choices, the desire to step away from danger and protect what they had just begun to build was overwhelming. But as they shared a glance, something inside Emily shifted. She felt alive in this orchestra of fear. Wait, she called out, her heart racing. The crowd jostled around them, but there was a familiar face a few feet away, Tim, struggling to reach them. Tim, she shouted, piercing through the clamor, over here. Tim's eyes locked onto hers, charging his determination as he pushed against the current of people. He was close, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. That moment stretched, filled with decision. She shared another glance with Adrian, who nodded ever so slightly. Together, they wouldn't leave anyone behind. Let us go get him, Adrian declared, pulling her along into the crowd. Each step was a powerful commitment to their growing bond, to face fears, to seek connection, to stand together in uncertainty. Their voices battled the mounting anxiety echoing through the chaos as they cut through the frantic masses. When they reached Tim, relief lit up his face. You guys, he exclaimed, panting. I thought I'd lost you. Not a chance, Emily replied, resolve strengthening her voice. We're in this together. But just as they turned toward the exit, the man who had sounded the alarm stepped forward, his expression grave. You can't leave yet. We need to wait. I can't promise it's safe outside. A wave of dread washed over them. How could they stand still when chaos raged beyond the walls? A subtle momentum built between them, caught in the push and pull of fear and responsibility. Emily felt the weight pressing down on her heart as she searched through her emotions. It was in these moments of vulnerability that she sensed the beauty of connection, the tapestry of shared humanity. She didn't want to abandon that now. The crowd went silent, suspending them within a climate charged with apprehension. Adrian squeezed her hand tighter. We can't stay in here forever, he whispered fiercely, scanning their options. Are there other exits? Tim asked, latching onto the cue of hope. The officer looked grim yet earnest. There may be. Follow me. With that, they surged toward the back corridor, a path fraught with uncertainty but glowing with the flicker of possibility. As they made their way down the dimly lit hallway, shadows flitted across the walls, each step bringing a blend of fear and excitement. In that moment, Emily understood her own transformation. She was no longer hidden behind the reception desk, many layers deep inside herself. Here, she felt the pulse of courage, the connection of taking action with those she cared for. No matter what comes next, she said softly, we've got each other. The echoes of danger faded into the background, allowing the bonds they forged to shine through. Outside, the air was electric as they burst through the exit and into the chaos of the night. The sound of voices melded with distant sirens. The moon hung low, shrouded in the uncertain haze of worry. The world felt alive with challenge. Frankly, they had no idea whether this journey would lead to safety or further tribulations. But the essence of their unfolding story was not solely shaped by the external threats, it was defined by the strength they discovered together. Emily's heart thudded as she observed the faces around her. The raw emotion washed over her, and she knew this was only the beginning of something profound. As they stood together, surveying the tumultuous scene, she felt the pull of connection course through her. Whatever happens, we face it as a team, Adrian stated firmly, pulling them into a huddle. Let us go find the others together. The warmth in his voice ignited something within Emily. They were all heroes, capable of confronting shadows, fear, and uncertainty together. With newfound courage, Emily stepped forward, the cool night air invigorating her spirit. The weight of doubt melted away, replaced by the undeniable strength of community and love. She glanced at Adrian and Tim, their faces set with determination, and felt joy spread through her chest like sunlight breaking through a storm. She had stepped into her life from behind the veil of isolation. Let us move, she shouted, leading the way. And that night, as they ventured into the unknown, they were not just running from chaos, they were running towards a future built on trust, understanding, and undeniable connection. In this vast, unpredictable world, they found solace in each other and in the authenticity of shared dreams. This is your moment, my friend. You need to subscribe now to catch every heartwarming and transformative story we create together. Don't wait not even one more second to share this uplifting tale with at least 5 friends who need to hear about bravery and connection. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm. Your support makes all the difference. And comment below your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. Let us keep the conversation going.